All right, guys. Well, we'll go ahead and jump in. I want to be mindful of our time, and ultimately, you guys will notice your mics were on when you came on. You also have your videos, and so we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you do end up having any questions, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. Ultimately, we are doing these different local advisory council meetings this week across the state of Tennessee. We are doing 91 of them total because we have 90 counties that we serve, and we did one statewide one. And it gives us a chance to kind of present data about your particular county. And the reason why we do this is because when Tennessee Promise was created, legislation stated that a group of people would be appointed by the county mayor, and this local advisory council would provide guidance, feedback, layer of accountability, just so that way you guys knew kind of where your county stood, since tnAchieves is the partnering organization working with your students. A couple of years ago, we did these in person, but as we all know, the past year and a half has been a little bit different, and COVID has kind of prevented that. But with Zoom, we're able to invite more people, and although this one's not a huge group, it still gives us that ability to loop in anybody who's maybe been involved with tnAchieves in the past couple of years. And so once again, if you guys have any questions, let me know, but we'll jump right into it. So this is just a brief overview again of what tnAchieves is. We work in 90 of the 95 counties across Tennessee. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Basically, we partner with the state to help facilitate the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. So that's reminders, that's making sure that students, parents, they're all aware of what they need to be doing to maintain their eligibility. In total, since we started back in 2008 as tnAchieves, we have worked with over 440,000 students, 71,000 volunteers have been recruited to be mentors, and in total working with over 600 high schools and 67 post-secondary institutions. You will see that there's 5 other counties that are served by the AIRS Foundation. So some of the numbers that we're showing you are going to be tnAchieves specific, but those other counties are indeed served by the AIRS Foundation. This slide right here is just kind of give another review of what tnAchieves does and how we facilitate kind of the Tennessee Promise Scholarship and how we work in your county. So one of the big 3 things that we do is obviously we help facilitate the last dollar scholarship that every high school senior that applies for it is eligible for. The state kind of takes over the financial aspect of it since 2015, but that is kind of the big carrot that a lot of students see or have been told since 2015, that if they want to go to a post-secondary institution, they will have that opportunity, and Tennessee Promise covers that financial aspect of it. But what tnAchieves also adds to that is kind of the volunteer mentor that every student is assigned when they sign up for Tennessee Promise. It's our responsibility to recruit those mentors. And we know that although money and financial aid is great, sometimes it is something more besides just that is student needs. And so we've seen that a mentor can play that critical role in kind of the transition from high school into college. And so we continue to push the mentors, continue to recruit them, and continue to try to make them as big a part of our organization as possible, because working with the number of students that we work with every year, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. And then the last big pillar that we've always had since 2008 was community service. Every student is required to do 8 or more hours before every semester they plan on using community service. We'll jump into those numbers a little bit later on, but that's been a pillar of our organization since the beginning, and one that we really feel a strong passion for, that students should be able to give back to their community since they are being given this opportunity. We do have some new initiatives that I'll talk about a little bit, and some of the data will also highlight that, but those involve our summer programs that we host, as well as our new complete program that we've had for a couple of years. The summer program is something that's done at all 13 community colleges under the name of the Summer Bridge program. And what it does is it's a 3-week sort of academic boot camp that allows students who would otherwise maybe be entering learning support classes be able to try to test out of those classes over that 3-week period. Those programs, like I said, are really fun, a lot for our staff, but they do show a lot of success as well. From this past year alone, we had about what was an 89% success rate. So 89% of the students that took part in the Summer Bridge program either tested out of their learning support classes or showed improvement from the beginning to the end of summertime. So they were more prepared for when they stepped on campus. The other summer program that we do is called the Summer Institute, and that's currently being housed in Memphis, kind of the urban Memphis core. Students that we focus on that are in a similar position, but with the Institute program, they're able to not only try to earn college credits to test out of their learning support classes, but they also get a chance to earn college credit earning classes. And so this past year, we had 29 students take part in it. It was 6 weeks total. Usually it's a little bit longer, but with COVID this year, it was kind of compressed. But the great thing about it was all 29 ended up having a success rate. They all ended up testing out of their classes. And it showed that these students who were otherwise going to be a semester behind and probably more at risk, because all of them were identified as a minority and 85% of them came from a low income background, showed that they were able to do the college level classes in the kind of the setting they were in, and they're better prepared now for the fall semester. So that's one of our new initiatives. And then the other one is the Complete program, which is every county that we serve in. We are working with kind of the most at-risk students in those counties, basically based on their family income, because we've seen that that's the biggest indicator of whether or not a student will or will not be successful when they progress to school. And so what those students get is they get a paired coach that is constantly checking in with them and kind of taking the baton of what a mentor does with the student before they start college. So these coaches are focusing on retention, because that's what our next big thing is with Tennessee Achieves. We've been able to get students to school, but our next biggest goal is basically retaining them and making sure that they are being successful when they do actually get there. So, like I said, if any of that didn't make any sense, I will go into greater detail about that when we go into some of the details. But if you do have questions, just let me know. This slide is, again, just kind of showing you a brief overview of what Tennessee Achieves is kind of reaching and who we're touching over the course of the state. We're working in 90 counties, 74 of which are considered rural. 35 are considered at risk or distressed, according to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. Out of all of those 600 high schools that we are working with, and then those students that actually do end up being Tennessee Promise eligible and using it are going to one of 67 colleges. So that could be one of the 13 community colleges across the state, one of the 27 TCATs, the Tennessee College of Applied Technologies, or one of the 27 four-year universities that are Tennessee Promise eligible and are offering an associate's degree program. So that bottom line is kind of showing you the breakdown of where the students are going on average. So on average, about 8 out of 10 are going to the local community college, with the other 20% being divided evenly between the TCAT or one of the four-year universities. I will say Pickett County's numbers are probably a little bit skewed, because I know that TCAT Livingston is not super far away either. And so I think more students are probably going there than maybe the statewide average is saying. Yes, Pam.
I have a question. Does this account for students who do not use Tennessee Achieves, but go on to a four-year college that does not take that money?
So these particular numbers right here are only looking at those that were Promise eligible and are going to a Promise institution. We will have a slide later on that shows kind of the retention rates for that group of students that you just mentioned that maybe are going to Tennessee Tech or MTSU or out of state. Right. We'll kind of highlight those guys in a little bit.
Okay, because a lot of mine go to Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, no, and we know that. We know that for a lot of students that maybe are, that's their plan A, and Promise is going to end up being a plan B or C for them. But we do have an ability to track them, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, so let's dive in a little bit further. So this, again, is going to look at kind of everybody that is applying for Tennessee Promise. So annually, we're working with over 60,000 students. A couple of years ago, we had our highest number of applicants, which was about 64,000. And in total, from that group of students every year, about 89% of them, or they represent about 89% of all high school seniors, okay? So we are seeing almost 9 out of 10, every high school senior is gonna go through the Tennessee Achieves program. As we mentioned, though, we do know there's some students that, they already have their plan set, they are not applying for Promise, they're going out of state, or they're part of the AIRS Foundation, so they kind of fill that other gap. But for the most part, most high school seniors across the state are gonna be going through our Tennessee Achieves program because they're applying for Promise. That second little bar on the top line is then showing you everybody that started as a full-time first-time freshman at a Tennessee Community College. Almost 8 out of 10 are also going through the Tennessee Achieves program. So most of the people that are getting funneled into the community college pipeline are going through Tennessee Achieves. Additionally, 86% of all the community college graduates are also going through the Tennessee Achieves pipeline. So there's a really strong connection there with the community colleges. That second line then is just showing you a couple of interesting data points. Anybody that applies for Tennessee Promise, we're seeing about 56% of the students are also going to end up being eligible for federal financial aid. So when they're filing their FAFSA based on kind of the information they're providing on it, over half of the students that apply for Promise are also going to be eligible for some sort of Pell Grant. Some may be eligible for a full federal Pell Grant, whereas others may be only eligible for partial. But about 1 out of 2 every student are doing that. 40% of students are identifying as a first-gen student. That number is self-reported, so we don't know quite how for sure that is, but we like to point that out, what students are identifying when they do sign up for Tennessee Promise. And then 51% of them are actually ending up pursuing a major that is either STEM related or in the health science field. And that's important because it kind of ties in with the business aspect that Tennessee Promise was trying to incorporate, where we were producing employees that were going to be able to fill the jobs the state was going to try to recruit to different counties across the state. Specifically, like with nursing, we see a big influx of students pursuing that because we know that that's going to be an in-demand job and one that is going to be, sustaining for the student and their families as they get older. The last little bottom line is just showing you the cost. So the first one is the cost of Promise for the state. That's about how much for every student that ends up being Promise eligible and using it, about how much it's costing per year. And then the $2.5 million budget is how much it's costing for Tennessee Achieves to operate. Tennessee Achieves operates pretty much privately funded, but we do receive some funding from the state for things like our complete coaching model that I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, and I'll kind of talk a little bit later on as well. At this point, is there any questions before we jump into Pickett County specifically? All right. We get to some of the good stuff now. We get to see specifically Pickett County. This slide is going to show us FAFSA submission rate for the class of 2021, as well as then the overall community service hours that Pickett County and the state have submitted. So if we look at the FAFSA rate first, we'll see that statewide, as a state, Tennessee Achieves saw 86% of the students file their FAFSA. That's a really good number. It's still leading the country, but it's actually a little bit lower than it was the previous year, which was around 90%. And so, as with most things, we know COVID kind of played a role with that. But the great thing about it is when we look at Pickett County stayed at 90%. So that's a thanks to not only the high school staff, the college staff, and just the community in general for really motivating the students in Pickett County to understand that, hey, the FAFSA is a super important thing, even if you're in classes virtually, or you're kind of, school's not what it always is and you don't have the connection point. People were working together and they were getting those students to file that FAFSA rate. And that's important because it not only for Pell Grants, but for Promise, for the Hope Scholarship, it helps create all of that as an opportunity for students. The second thing that we then see, the community service hours, those are the total number of hours that Pickett County students have completed for Tennessee Promise purposes. And so those numbers will just continue to grow as we continue to work in Pickett County, but we just like to kind of highlight that so that way students, or all the local advisory council and interested parties can see how much hours have been given back. Statewide, we're just under 3.4 million. And so that's just a really remarkable number for us to look back on when we think that when we started in 2008, we had 500 or so students in Knox County. And now every year we're working with, at our peak, about 90,000 students, 60,000 new high school seniors and about 30,000 or so college students. It's pretty mind blowing, but it's a big idea and a big contribution to why we have that many community service hours. This jumps into student progress. And so the numbers you see here are going to highlight the class of 2019 students. That's going to be 2019 for the first 3 rows, and then the class of 2017 for the 3-year graduation rate. And so if we look at that, you can see the number statewide of applicants for that year, as well as those that enrolled with Tennessee Promise. And then you can also see it in Pickett County, how many applied, how many actually ended up using Promise that first semester. And if we look at retention rate. So once again, retention rate statewide is about 2/3, and that's a good number, but it's something that we're not satisfied on. If anything, we want that number to reflect what Pickett County is showing, which is 9 out of 10 students were retaining from their first year to the second year. Albeit, I know it's a little bit of a smaller sample size, but still, if you're getting a student and you end up using Promise, then they're actually retaining and staying at that Promise institution. This also makes me believe that this is also a very big indicator for those other students maybe didn't end up using Promise in Pickett County, that they were probably also in a very good position to retain and have the information they need to be successful from year 1 to year 2. The last little thing, like I said, is the class of 2017, and we'll see the 3-year graduation rate. And then once again, Pickett County is just blowing the state out of the water here. The 35% graduation rate is something that is not something to be super proud of, but it is an improvement statewide. When we look at just the community college graduation rate before, when we first started, it was around 14%. So that number has grown, but obviously we want to get that number to continue to grow, continue to look exactly like what Pickett County's numbers looking, if not even higher than that. So if we go to this next little thing, we'll kind of take us back a step back out and look at the statewide averages again. And this is where, Pam, it kind of pulls in those students that maybe otherwise were not going to use Promise, but did apply for Tennessee Promise at one point. So as you saw, 67% was the first year retention rate, and that's showing any student that is going to a Promise institution. If we looked at just the students that go to a community college, not looking at Promise whatsoever, their retention rate is about 53%. The Tennessee Achieve students are around 67%. But then if we incorporate that group of students that just applied for Promise, but then didn't maybe necessarily end up using it, and they went to Tennessee Tech, or they went out of state, or they went to, just anywhere that wasn't Promise eligible, those students as a whole are retaining at almost 74%. So almost 3/4 of those students are retaining if they just go to school. And so that's a really, really strong point for us that we feel like, okay, we're making progress. Tennessee Achieves, it's having some sort of effect, but how can we harness that and really just continue to drive those numbers up? And then that kind of points us down to the graduation rate. So not only is retention important, but also seeing that a student gets a credential. So once again, if we only look at those students that started at the community college, whether or not they were Promise eligible, their graduation rate was around that 35% rate. But if we look at just Tennessee Achieve students at those community colleges, the rate goes up to 51%. So things that we're seeing that are positive outcomes that we're not satisfied with, but the things that we're continuing to work on and put our resources in. So you heard me at the beginning mention a little bit about summer programs, about the complete program, and about Knox, maybe not Knox Promise, I haven't mentioned that one yet. But these programs are showing also productive and positive data where students that are participating in one of those summer programs, they're retaining at an increase of 34%. For those students that are in the complete program, so those at-risk students in each county, in the counties that we serve, are having an increase in 23% in their retention rate. So we're seeing things that are working that we're just trying to perfect and try to get better and better with each passing year. Knox Promise is kind of on its own little island, but it's something that we're hoping to expand statewide. Thanks to some private donations in Knox County, we're able to attach every student, regardless of their income, to a complete coach with Tennessee Achieves. So I think it's 5 of our 18 coaches are working just primarily in Knox County, which means they're checking in on these students, they're helping them navigate the college system, they're there for them as a resource, kind of as someone that can listen to them maybe outside of school. And they're also being given the option to apply for what are called complete grants. In some circles, they call that emergency funding, but these complete grants help cover some of the other costs that come with going to school that aren't always advertised. So things like transportation, food insecurities, books and materials, things that maybe would otherwise prevent a student from being successful or actually pursuing, going to school in a semester. Those Knox County students can apply for those grants. And if they're approved, they can have that information there to help them and hopefully take their mind off and allow them to focus on school. We're seeing that as, retention rate is increasing by almost 42%. Our goal is that that'll serve as a proof point that we will then be able to expand that across the state. So that way, regardless of where a student is coming from, whether it be Knox County, Shelby County, Davidson, Pickett, Murray County, wherever it may be, that they would also have that opportunity if they fit the requirement that it would come to submit a grant request. But these are just some of the things that we're working on as we're trying to focus on retention. And the reason why we're really, really focusing on that is because we look at this slide. This slide is showing us the college going rate. So most of it has been super positive up to this point, especially Pickett County's specific numbers. But you'll see from 2014 to 2015, the college growing rate boomed and went up by 4.6%. And that happily just coincided with Tennessee Promise going into effect. In the subsequent years since, it stayed right around, kind of leveled out between 62 and 64%. But then, of course, 2020 happened, and we saw a decrease in the state college going rate. And if we look at Pickett counties, you also saw a little bit of a decrease, but not quite as much, which is good. That's awesome. That once again shows the community partners, the people that are invested in these students, and making sure that they are hopefully not falling through those cracks. But because the college going rate has decreased, we want to try to, nip that as much as we can and try to get that back up to the levels that we've seen in the previous 5 years. So how do we do that? How can we combat with, the challenges that COVID and just what a second year of not sure what school's going to look like for these high school seniors? How can we make sure that we're helping them? Well, that brings us back full circle to kind of, the mentors. As a state, we're trying to recruit 9,000 mentors, and we can't do this work by ourselves. So we need these volunteer mentors. The mentoring role itself is not going to change. So for anybody that has mentored in the past, that is going to stay the same. We're still going to ask you to be a task manager, a resource, and an encourager. Basically reminding these students, hey, you have this deadline coming up, or have you thought about this, or are you getting this done, checking this off. Are you, if you have questions, reach out to me, ask me. I can help point you in the right direction if I know about it. And then that encouragement piece, which we feel like is going to be super important now with the class of 2022, is just simply letting these students know that, hey, this is an opportunity for you. You can do it if you want to do this and you want to pursue this. You're going to have someone in your corner that can help you and your family out. Ultimately, we're trying to recruit that. Statewide, it's a big number, but we've been successful. And I know that we usually always get our number in Pickett County as well. For any prospective mentors, it's going to be very similar to what it's been like, where you'll still be able to call, text, and email. But the class of 2022 is going to kind of give you a couple of different options to mentor. In the past, you guys may have heard, or you may have been mentors before as well, that, we used to do these in-person meetings where we would go to the schools, get together, and we're not going to be doing that this year for obvious reasons. But we are going to try to provide mentors and students an opportunity to connect. So we're going to have these open houses that will be at the college campuses with the college staff and a Tennessee Achieves staff member. And we'll basically just be there to allow you to have a space that you can meet up with students. Tennessee Achieves will be there to answer any questions, as well as the college staff to help answer any questions. But it'll just be an opportunity for mentors and students to get together in kind of a smaller scale. In addition to that, we're also going to encourage mentors to try to think out of the box and try to, if you want to meet up with your students and you're able to, by all means. Our chairman, Randy Boyd, every year he meets up with the students and they go get pizza together. And that's kind of how they get to know each other and they spend that little bit of time together. So we never really advocated that in the past, but we know that a lot of mentors are asking for that because about 2/3 on a survey had said that they would really like some sort of in-person connection point. In addition to that, though, we will still be running tnAchieves Connect, which is our virtual portal that all students will be entered into and that they'll have to activate and use to kind of meet certain requirements. So it's going to be a one-stop shop for mentors that, if they use it this past year, they'll kind of be familiar with it. But for any new mentors, it'll be a space where you can go and you'll see all of your students in one place. You can message them all in one place, and you'll be able to do virtual calls, possibly. You can do phone calls, you can do messaging. You don't have to do and keep track of all those different things. It'll be all housed in one place. And any updates that the student makes will automatically be updated into Connect. So that way, as a mentor, you'll be able to see that in real time. So ultimately, when we look at Pickett County, it's not a huge ask, but we do need 6 mentors. And so, like I said, if you're a new mentor, the application, which is on our website, tnAchieves.org/mentors, you can find it. It'll be very simple to do. And if you're a returning mentor, it's something that you can easily just provide some updated information on that application, and you'll be signed up again for next year. Most important thing is that December 3rd is that deadline date. So we'll be pushing that. But I have a very confident feeling that we will get those mentors in Pickett County. But next steps, how can you guys, a local advisory council, help us? One of it is, obviously mentoring if you haven't already done so. But in addition to that is just spreading kind of what Tennessee Achieves is and what it is like to be a mentor. So if you're involved in a community organization, whether that be the local chamber, Kiwanis, Lions Club, Rotary, any of those things, if they have a time and a place that we can come and speak to that group, we'll do it. If you have a listserv or a group of people, if you just want to share with your friends and family, you can email the mentors email, mentors@tnachieves.org, or myself, and we'll get you that communication that you can then blast out to those people. We're just trying to get the word out there so that way people know that, hey, this is something that we need to be able to get so that way we can work with the amount of students that we work with. Last thing is just kind of spreading the word about Tennessee Promise. Last year, we didn't get to see any of the students in person, and I think that may have had an effect as well. Some students may not have applied that otherwise would have. And so by simply letting the class of 2020 know that the application is already live and up to date, that just ensures that hopefully everybody starts the process. And then that allows us to be able to track them for kind of these big picture data views, but also be able to hopefully guide them at least up until the fall semester when they can decide, okay, do I use Promise or do I not use it? They'll at least be prepared and they'll be able to make the best decision that's for them. So in total, that's kind of everything we wanted to present to you guys. But at this time, Pam or Deborah, is there anything I can help answer specifically? Okay.
I think I'm good with it. We just need to try to find us some mentors before December.
Yeah, and I feel like we'll get there. It's a very manageable number, so I think we'll get there.
I do have one question.
Okay.
What's the minimum requirements for a mentor? Do they have to have a college degree?
They do not. So basically,
Okay.
if you are just motivated and you want to help out, you can do it. We have a big wide range. We have obviously a lot of people that have eventually gotten a credential of some sort, but we also have mentors who didn't go to college, and that's also
Okay.
perfectly fine as well. The only
That's
really
a
big,
misunderstanding that people in the community think they have to have a degree.
no, and I think it's great to have that sort of diversity, because it shows students that, hey, all these people, the whole community in general is supporting me, and they believe that, this could be the best step for me, and they only want what's best for me. And so we basically, as long as a mentor is able to pass the background check, we will welcome them with open arms, and we will train them and give them as much information as possible. So definitely pass that information along, and we will be glad to have them. Well, perfect, guys. Well, it's been great seeing you guys. Great meeting you. But if you have any questions, you can see my name, my number, my emails here. So do not hesitate to reach out. But hopefully we'll be seeing you guys when all of this stuff is fully settled in, and we'll be able to all do these in person again. So, all right. Well,
Bye,
thank you,
Deborah.
Deborah. Bye, Pam.
Bye.
Bye.